All right, so here at the brewery, we've got one of these big blue Chinese lasers. That sounds a little weird to say it that way, but that's what they're called. Doesn't have a brand name, doesn't have anything on it to market. And we had something go sideways. It was malfunctioning, and the suggestion was to replace the power supply. So I'm going to walk through replacing that power supply. On the side door here, here's your laser power supply. Has these, I already got this partly done. It has these two wiring clips that just unhook. There are 4 screws basically in the corners. Well, I guess they're not screws, they're bolts. Bolts with a little nut that hold it to this plate. You can get them out. You can't really get to the nut in the back, so to get them out, you got to kind of put some outward pressure on the power supply while you twist the screw out so that the screw will unthread from the nut behind it. And you can see my high-tech method of keeping things in place for the time being, because then this red wire leads up to the actual laser tube, and we're going to have to unhook that from the laser tube as well. One important note here: unplug your main power before you start poking at the power supply. You don't want to get zapped. No one wants you to get zapped. But once everything's unhooked, the old power supply will just come right out. All right, so this back door here is where the laser tube is. And this little pin that sticks up right here is where the red wire from your power supply connects. I learned as I started getting into this that as it comes, this red wire from your power supply is just twisted around that post, which is not super, it feels kind of sketchy to me. So I'm going to end up soldering this little pigtail onto it so I can connect this with a wire nut instead of just having it wrapped around there. But that is not what this video is about. Here we're talking about the power supply. So to change that, you just need to unhook this red wire from your power supply. And when it comes, it's zip tied to the laser tube itself. I've already cut those zip ties, but I twisted it in place here. So you can just cut those zip ties. You'll want to secure it again in the end, but now we're ready to pull out the old power supply. All right, old supply out. All right, here's the new power supply that I ordered. This one comes from, was it Omtech, I think. I ordered it through Amazon, though, because that little hole in the side, I think, is to be able to tune the power supply to your specific laser tube, I believe is the point. Make sure, pay attention to this voltage setting. It comes on 230, but I'm running off of 110 here, so I flipped it over to the 115. Now, the only issue is that these pinouts are a little bit different than where the original came from, so we're going to have to reference our board here and figure out where they all go. So when we're trying to trace wires, if you squeeze in on this, you can pop the little cover plate off, making it a whole lot easier to trace and figure out where all the wires come from. The instruction manual for this laser doesn't say anything about what any of this is. There's no wiring diagram or anything in there. So we're flying a little bit blind. Fortunately, the new power supply does tell me what each of those pins needs to be. So I know this is my ground, this is my hot and neutral for AC input. I just gotta figure out where those come from here. Alright, so from this original 4-pronger, the red I'm fairly sure is my AC hot, the blue I'm fairly sure is my AC neutral, and the green and yellow goes to my ground. So I've got those three. Now I got to figure out what HLPG in and 5 volt. In and 5 volt seems obvious, but we got to find them. All right, so here's the second bank from the old power, from the previous power supply. So according to this has HLPG in and 5 volt. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of 6 prongs. Now if we come over to the actual, right, so there I've got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got to figure out which one of these isn't. I got to figure this out. So I got to figure out what that black wire coming into the top one is, and where that fits into the mix here, and why there's not a 5 volt line coming in. I don't know if I need it or not. I guess we'll find out. But I think it's interesting that the H and the L on here are right there, are just shorted out together. Seems a little weird, but all right, we'll try it, see what happens. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? Try the whole thing. We'll see. I'm going to translate them over the ones that are obvious and go from there. All right, so that black wire that I had to figure out where it went, that appears to be coming from the anode of, or the other end of the laser tube, which I think is where that black wire is supposed to connect to. So I think instead of, that's maybe why I have one last pin, is instead of connecting to that pin, it must go right there. That's what I'm going to try, at least, and we'll see if it works. There we go. We got the laser power supply all connected in. We're running. We're cutting. Yes, I know that's down and it shouldn't be, or that's up and it should be down. That's why we didn't put our hands in there. Yeah. But we're working. I think I'm going to have to tune it, but that's a video for another time. There you go. That's how you swap from one of those old blue power supplies to one of these Omtecs. Cheers!